Okay, we are on North Madison Street. In the book, this is called High Street, and this is the house that Louis and Jonathan live on. And Mrs. Zimmerman, of course. As you can see, this is a very beautiful street with Victorian houses, pleasant sidewalks. Right behind me is Mansion Street, which is where Rosarita lived. So the way we're walking right now is exactly how Louis would have walked to get to Rosarita's house, and vice versa. Just up ahead I see a historical marker. I suspect I know what it is. Oh my God. Oh my goodness gracious. Look at that tower. Ladies and gentlemen, we have arrived. Oh my God. Oh my God, look at this. Oh my God. Oh my God. The Jeremiah Cronin Jr. house. This picturesque residence was erected in 1872 for Marshall merchant Jeremiah Cronin Jr. and his wife Susan. Local contractor Frederick N. Church constructed this house, as well as Cronin's 1869 Michigan Avenue commercial block on September 5th, 1872. God, here we are, guys. Oh, this is amazing. Trees are spooky with no leaves on them. Is this not just how you picture it? The House with a Clock in Its Walls by John Bellairs. Hi, I'm Zach. When I was 12 years old, my mother took me over to her friend's house, and her friend pointed to a box of books and said, "Pick one if you want." I picked a black paperback book with a very spooky haunted house on the cover, and it was called The House with a Clock in Its Walls. Now, I don't want to be dramatic and say that it changed my life, but it certainly changed my reading habits, introduced me to my favorite author of all time. Before I found that book, I only read Happy Hollister's mystery novels and Uncle Scrooge comic books. But from that day forward, every time I went to the bookstore, I would run directly to the young adult section and hope and pray that there was a new John Bellairs book. And every once in a while there was, and it was like the best day of my life. Excuse me, it's 25 degrees here. The nose is running a little. Fast forward to 1992, my first year of college. I was still looking for new John Bellairs books. So I ordered A Face in the Frost from the college bookstore. And when it came, I read the back and it said that John Bellairs had passed away in 1991, which was one of the worst days of my life. Oh my God. No more new John Bellairs books. I was heartbroken. Of course, luckily, thanks to Brad Strickland, there have been new John Bellairs books that have come out. But anyway, I'm here in Marshall, Michigan, also known as New Zebedee. It's the first time I've ever been here in person, but I've certainly lived here in my mind for 32 years now. Fast forward to 2009 when the housing crash happened. I remember seeing this house on Zillow for $125,000. And I thought, my God, I could own the house with a clock in its walls. Didn't happen, of course, and I couldn't have afforded to fix it up anyway. Fast forward to 10 years ago, I noticed that John Bellairs books were being forgotten. The bookstore only had like one of them. The library had maybe two of them. And I thought, my God, he's been dead for a long time. His works are being forgotten. I thought I would, and the audiobooks that you could find were only on cassette tape. So I thought, I'll make my own audiobook. I'll upload it to YouTube, and maybe, just maybe, some kid will find it and love John Bellairs as much as I did. So I did 2 books with a craptastic $10 microphone, put them on YouTube. And then for The House with the Clock in Its Walls, I needed to upgrade to a Yeti microphone. And yeah, it went well. Sorry, somebody was staring at me from across the street. So anyway, which is funny because I think that's Mrs. Izzard's house. Old lady just came out and stared at me. So I did The House with the Clock in Its Walls, and then I did The Figure in the Shadows, put them on YouTube, and then the movie came out, and suddenly my audiobook went up to 300,000 views thanks to the movie. On the other hand, because the movie came out, they started reissuing all the books, they started reissuing all the audiobooks. And as a result, what I was doing kind of didn't make sense anymore. I almost kind of felt bad about it, so I stopped. But earlier this year, I went ahead and I finished the 3rd book in the trilogy and put that up there. And maybe I'll do more, but I figured since I was here, I would go ahead and read some passages from The House with a Clock in Its Walls right here in New Zebedee. What do you think? I meant to bring my original battered old paperback book. Unfortunately, I forgot it, so we're stuck with the Kindle version. Works just as well, I guess. When they got to the top of the hill, Jonathan set down the suitcase. He took out a red bandana handkerchief and mopped his face with it. Well, there it is, Lewis. Barneveld's Folly. What do you think of it? Lewis looked. He saw a 3-story stone mansion with a tall turret on the front. The whole house was lit up, downstairs, upstairs, and upper upstairs. There was even a light in the little oval window that was set like an eye in the bank of shingles at the top of the turret. In the front yard grew a large chestnut tree. Its leaves rustled in the warm summer breeze. Jonathan was standing at parade rest, his hands behind him, his legs wide apart. Again he said, "What do you think of it, Lewis, eh?" "I love it, Uncle Jonathan. I've always wanted to live in a mansion, and this is sure some mansion." Lewis walked up to the frilly fence and touched one of the iron pom-poms that ran in a row along the top. He stared at the sign that spelled out 100 in red glass reflectors. "Is it real, Uncle Jonathan? The house, I mean?" Jonathan glanced at him strangely. Yes, of course it is. It's real. Let's go inside." Okay, now I'm going to fast forward to an indoor scene with Mrs. Zimmerman when they're about to play poker with Lewis. "No, I have not been stealing any of your precious brasher doubloons," said Mrs. Zimmerman in an irritated voice. "I was just straightening up the stacks. Okay, brush mush?" "Straightening up the stacks. I've heard that one before, hag face. But it doesn't matter, because we're going to have to divvy up the coins 3 ways. You play poker, don't you, Lewis?" "Yes, but my dad won't." He stopped. Jonathan saw tears in his eyes. Lewis choked down a sob and went on. My dad wouldn't have let me play for money." "Oh, we don't play for money," said Mrs. Zimmerman, laughing. "If we did, this house and everything in it would belong to me." "Poop it would," said Jonathan, shuffling the cards and puffing clouds of smoke from his pipe. "Poop it would. Get 'em all divided up, Frumpy? No? Well, when you're ready, it's going to be dealer's choice. And I'm the first dealer. No ladies' games like Spit Out the Window or Johnny's Nightshirt. Straight 5-card draw, nothing wild." Okay, I just got permission from the caretaker, the guy who watches the house, to actually walk up the driveway and go out behind the house. He was wondering why I was taking pictures, but nice guy. And look at this. He's letting us come out behind the house. This is very cool. It says Cronin on it in the backyard. There's a big tree. There's an outhouse. Is it a real outhouse? I don't know. Wow, this is absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. Okay, I am now in the backyard of the Cronin house, Lewis's house, Uncle Jonathan's house, whatever you want to say. This, of course, is where the famous eclipse of the moon happened, so I'm going to read part of that. Uncle Jonathan walked over to the tulip bed, put his ear to the ground, and listened. He motioned for the others to join him. Lewis put his ear to the damp earth, and he heard strange things. He heard the noise that earthworms make as they slowly inch along, breaking hard black clods with their blunt heads. He heard the secret inwound conversations of bulbs and roots, and the breathing of flowers. And Lewis knew strange things without knowing how he came to know them. He knew that there was a cat named Texaco buried in the patch of ground he knelt on. Its delicate ivory skeleton was falling slowly to pieces down there, and its dank fur was shriveled and matted and rotten. The boy who had buried the cat had buried a sand pail full of shells near it. Lewis did not know the name of the boy, or how long ago he had buried the cat in the pail, but he could see the red and blue pail clearly. Now let's fast forward to where Mrs. Zimmerman and Mrs. Zimmerman and Jonathan were arguing. When they found them, Jonathan was arguing with Mrs. Zimmerman, who argued right back, though her ear was pressed flat to the ground. "I say it's the old storm sewer system," she muttered. "It was lost track of in 1868 because the charts got thrown out with the waste paper." "Well, you can think what you like, Frizzy Wig," said Jonathan as he knelt down for another listen. "I say it's an underground stream. Capharnaum County is full of them, and it would account for the fact that the Sin and Flesh Creek is much bigger when it leaves New Zebedee than when it enters it." "You're full of beans, Fatso," said Mrs. Zimmerman, whose ear was still pressed to the ground. "I think I know the sound of water rushing through a brick tunnel. It's all vaulty and hollow." "Like your head?" I love that passage. So let me give you a shot of the backyard. Here's the house, backyard. Can't you just picture it? Here we are, looking up at the sky, at the moon. Unfortunately, the moon is not here for this, but this is where they would have stood and watched the eclipse. Uncle Jonathan, Mrs. Zimmerman, Lewis, and Tarby. I really love this side yard here. Imagine just hanging out here, sitting in that swing, playing a saxophone perhaps. There it is. I'm gonna zoom in. There's the swing where Uncle Jonathan liked to play his saxophone, perhaps. All right, we're walking around the side of the house. Just love this mossy path. You may notice there's no evil jack-o'-lanterns spitting acid at people. As in the book, those don't exist in real life. But God, what a pleasure to be here. To get this close. To it, to talk to the neighbor. Caretaker grew up in the house across the street, which I guess that would be, one of these would be the house that Mrs. Izzard lived in, if you want to say lived. But yeah. Okay, we are in Oak Ridge Cemetery. You can just imagine Tarby hanging out here somewhere, hiding, waiting to scare Lewis when he finally makes it up here. And here we have a mausoleum like the one from the book. Unfortunately, there's no iron doors, but there is an iron gate. As Tarby held the flashlight steady, Lewis filled in the border of the magic circle with symbols from a piece of paper. When he had chalked in the last strange sign, there was still a blank space in the border. Lewis had read in Jonathan's book that you were supposed to fill in the space with the name of the dead person. "Well," said Tarby, "I don't see any dead people." "It's not finished," said Lewis. "We've got to put in a name." Tarby looked disgusted. "You mean you don't know it?" "No, I don't," sighed Lewis. "Maybe if we sit here for a minute or two, it will come to us." They knelt silently at the door of the tomb. A sudden gust of wind rattled the dead leaves on an oak tree that grew nearby. Minutes passed. Lewis's mind was completely blank. Then, for some reason, he picked up the chalk. "Hold the flashlight down here," he said. Slowly, carefully, he spelled out a name. The funny thing was that he was not thinking of a name at all. It was as if someone else was guiding his hand. With one last downstroke of the chalk, he completed the word, Selina. It was a strange name. Lewis had never known anyone called Selina. He didn't even know how to pronounce the name, but there it was. He stood up with the creased paper in his hand. Now he started to chant in a high-pitched, nervous voice. "Abba, Bibi, Bachabe." He stopped. Tarby, who was crouched beside him, grabbed his arm and squeezed it hard. From deep within the tomb came a sound. Boom! A deep, hollow sound. The iron doors jolted as if they had been struck a blow from inside. The chain rattled, and there was a clunk on the pavement. The padlock had fallen off. And now, as the boys knelt, terrified, two small spots of freezing gray light appeared. They hovered and danced before the doors of the tomb, which now stood ajar. And something black, blacker than the night, blacker than ink spilled into water, was oozing from the space between the doors. It was 5 minutes to 9 when the bus pulled up in front of Keemsoth's Rexall drugstore in the town of New Zebedee. Lewis got up, wiped his hands on his trousers, and tugged at the enormous cardboard suitcase that hung out over the edge of the metal rack. Lewis's father had bought the suitcase in London at the end of World War II. It was covered with ripped and faded Cunard Line stickers. Lewis pulled hard, and the suitcase lurched down onto his head. He staggered back across the aisle, with the suitcase held perilously in the air. Then he sat down suddenly, and the suitcase landed in his lap with a whoomp. "Oh, come on, don't kill yourself before I have a chance to meet you." There in the aisle stood a man with a bushy red beard that was streaked in several places with white. His Big Mac khaki trousers were bulged out in front by his pot belly, and he was wearing a gold button red vest over a blue work shirt. Lewis noticed that the vest had 4 pockets. There were pipe cleaners sticking out of the top 2, and a chain of paper clips was strung between the lower pair. One end of the chain was hooked to the winding knob of a gold watch. Jonathan Van Olden Barnevelt took his streaming pipe out of his mouth and held out his hand. "Hi, Lewis. I'm your Uncle Jonathan. I recognized you from a picture your father once sent me. Welcome to New Zebedee." Okay, I found a church here in New Zebedee. Maybe it's the one from this passage. A bell overhead began to strike the hour. Jonathan stopped talking. He froze on the spot. He dropped the suitcase and his arms hung limp at his sides. Lewis, frightened, looked up at him. Jonathan's eyes were glazed. The bell continued to toll. Lewis looked up. The sound was coming from a tall brick steeple across the street. The arches of the belfry made a howling mouth and 2 gaping eyes. Below the mouth was a large glowing clock face with iron numerals. Clang, another stroke. It was a deep-throated iron bell, and its sound made Lewis feel hopeless and helpless. Bells like that always did. But what was wrong with Uncle Jonathan?
This one went up for sale.
Yeah, the Hawaii house was the subject of a later book. Yeah. Well, after Bellairs died, they hired another guy to keep writing his books. He wrote one about the Hawaii house. Although in the book it's out in the middle of the woods, it's all over the ground. This is